CJ, I know you want to get ready to present. Okay.
Yeah.
Rome,
I can pass it
yeah,
if
Rome,
if you have anything.
No, he hit it on the head. I ain't really
Okay,
much I can say shit.
Now they kind of go more in depth, and they bring on this former military industrial complex person. I don't want to say his name. You'll know exactly who it is when you see it, to talk about what would be the effects of leaving NATO. This is the selling point on why Donald Trump is dangerous.
This now to take this a little bit further is former Secretary of Defense and former.
Oh, let me say, because Nick called this. He's like, this election cycle is going to be so weird because the Democratic Party are going to be the ones saying that if we elect Republicans, we're not going to be able to go to war. And that's essentially what they're saying, the argument in this way.
CJ, I don't want to ruin your flow of your presentation.
No, go ahead if you have something else.
No. Listen. If we ever get a chance, we need to listen to that and Apple Bottom segment when they talk about NATO. Once again, I don't want to ruin your flow because I know you got something planned. Because I actually listened to that segment, and Apple Bottom puts on a vintage and Apple Bottom performance. Just to put it lightly. But go ahead, CJ. I don't want. I'll pass it back to you. I just want.
I do have that prep to play, so
yeah, go ahead.
You can actually play that and get the reaction. So let's listen to this. It's about the first 2 minutes is when before we pause and discuss.
This now to take this a little bit further is former Secretary of Defense and former Secretary of the Army, Mark Esper. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being with us. Let's talk about what would happen with NATO. Where does Donald Trump stand on NATO? And what would that mean for the U.S.?
Well, first of all, good to be with you this afternoon, Katie. Look, with regard to NATO and having lived through this with him, I think one of the first things that would happen is he would withdraw support for Ukraine. And of course, if that were to happen, I think the whole effort to support Ukraine in its war against Russia would eventually crumble because.
Are you trying to help him win?
I'm sorry, because we already got the memo that the Pentagon said that they was going to run out of money by the end of the year.
Yeah,
for Ukraine.
Yeah,
so
heard that too.
Yeah, these are things we already know. You can't scare me with, oh, there's going to be less death. The fuck? Okay. Give us a fuck.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and actually, let me let it play a little more because he's gonna say something pretty shocking.
It's kind of like a big block on the Jenga tower. You pull us out, and everything else collapses. But I think his next move would be to begin pulling us out of NATO. Certainly, troops out of NATO countries. And eventually that could cause the collapse of the alliance. And that's exactly what Vladimir Putin would love to see, right?
Is that because... Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
For one, that's based, and I want to get Ajamu in here soon, but are you trying to help Trump win? For one. Two, I don't believe this shit, to be honest. And I will be either proven right or wrong with time. You know what I mean? And I will admit if I'm wrong. But my instinct, I've been telling you this for like over a year, right, CJ? My instinct is that Trump is going to do none of the shit he's been talking about. I promise you, if Trump wins, he's going to find a way to twist NATO to a good thing. He's like, I'm going to reform NATO and turn NATO to American first institution. I promise you, if he says that, his audience is going to eat it up. But anyway, sorry.
Look,
CJ, go ahead.
Let's remember.
No, go ahead.
Let's remember, under Donald Trump is when the U.S. policy began to whip NATO into shape. Donald Trump is the one that was pushing them or forcing them to meet their 2% of defense spending toward NATO. And he was in the military defense establishment. They were ecstatic. They loved it because we all know that's a lateral transfer of money from the pockets of the U.S. population straight into the defense industry. So they love Donald Trump on that. Look, these people are not concerned about NATO in that sense. They are concerned about continued support for the proxy war in Ukraine. But look, as Nick just said, I don't think that look, there is a trajectory, there is a momentum when it comes to bourgeois politics that even Donald Trump is not going to disrupt. That basically he will be a little less controllable in a second term, but Donald Trump is still going to advance policies that in the end will advance U.S. interests and the interests of the bourgeoisie. Look, the supporters of Donald Trump, what they really want in on the racket. They want in on the hustle. Okay. Yep, exactly. When Donald Trump impose the sanctions against China, it was for what? To basically force the Chinese into, they were going to try to bluff and extort the Chinese into expanding their purchases of products from the base of supporters. And they may have to make some concessions if Donald Trump wins, but it won't be a some kind of fundamental break with bourgeois politics. But they are concerned, just like they were pissed when Donald Trump blew the Trans-Pacific Partnership agreement, because for them, not only did they want to have that Trans-Pacific Partnership, that was the first leg of imposing then on the Europeans the Transatlantic Investment Partnership. And when the TPP was blown apart, that meant there was no momentum for the Transatlantic Partnership. And as a consequence, I would make the argument, maybe not here at this point, I just make this comment. What we're seeing now with the Russian proxy war is another example of war being politics in another form. That basically, as a consequence of that, being able to consolidate U.S. hegemony in Europe through that trade agreement, they are doing it and have done it through a war policy through Ukraine.
Absolutely. All right,
let's listen. It's kind of funny how all these they're trying to scare us with things that Trump didn't even do when he had the chance to do it, and they've been threatening us with these things for 8 years now. Like, come on now, like if he wanted to get rid of NATO and all that, he had more than enough time to do it. So don't tell me, oh, this is the time he's going to do it, because he's going to, man, get the fuck out of here. I ain't believing that shit. I believe it when I see it, but you're going to try to put fear in my heart from, oh, Trump breaking up NATO? Good. What the fuck? Do you know who you're talking to? But at the same time, do you know who you're talking to? Because I'm not a fucking fool. That's just like everybody was telling us Trump is going to touch bars. He's going to touch jail bars. And I said, do you really want to open up that can of worms? Because then old ass Carter going to get locked up. Bush going to get locked up. Obama going to get locked up. That's a can of worms that you can't even put the lid back on.
Word.
You don't want to take it there. What they're going to make it look like is these rich people could they gave you illusion of rich people and powerful people being held accountable. But is he behind bars, or is he giving an interview right here? All right, then.
is the collapse of NATO. So, and then the next look would be, does he start looking, as he would discuss with me and others at the time, does he look to pull troops out of Korea, out of Japan, and out of other countries who are allied with us? So look, it's quite disconcerting from a national security standpoint.
What does it mean for the U.S. if we're out of NATO and we're no longer a part of a system that offers protection in return for our protection?
Well, first and foremost, those regions of the world are less secure. So you'd have the Baltic states, the Poland, Romania, other frontline states vulnerable to Russian aggression. You would see the same in Asia in different ways from the Chinese Communist Party. And eventually, of course, that all ripples back to us. The United States would be less secure as well. And I would think, it would be a retreat from the global stage after 75 years of leadership around the world since the end of World War II, that America would withdraw. And I think when that happens, you would see the international rules and norms that have been built up since that time eventually fade away and crumble as well. So, look, it would be a very bad situation. I won't say as far as dystopian, but you would see so much of what we've come to know and experience, so much of the global order, the rules, the regulations, the norms that have made us all.
You hear him keep saying the global order, like
the supremacy.
Is this a real fear? I know that's kind of like what we're talking about, but this is what I'm going to bring the video back up. Is like, is it a real fear that they believe if Trump is there? Because think about how many wars we're in. If Trump is there, is it going to alter our plans with China? Is it going to alter our plans in Ukraine, like Ajamu was just speaking about? Is it going to alter our plans for what, said country? Just insert how many countries that we want to be in conflict with. So is that a real fear? Not because he's anti-war, but because he's not a warmonger in the same mode as they are a warmonger. It's kind of unconventional in a sense, like how he got them to to meet their 2% goal for NATO. It was because it was a public thing. He said all this stuff. They need to pay up their money. He was saying all these things that they don't normally do to get these countries on board. So, Ajamu, could you speak to any part of that or anything that resonates with you?
Look, the issue they have with Trump is only strategic. It's strategic differences. Donald Trump, one of his successes, in my opinion, and from the point of view of the bourgeoisie, was that Donald Trump had a strategy. He had a belief that there was a possibility of splitting off Russia from China, and that Russia should be brought back into the European family, and that the main target, the main enemy for U.S. hegemony was, in fact, China. Now, there were many elements in the foreign policy community that didn't completely agree with that. But by the time Donald Trump left office, there had been a consensus built within the foreign policy community that, in fact, the main threat was coming from China. So he, in fact, consolidated the anti-China line, a line that was first created and advanced under the Obama-Biden administration. So what's going to happen if Donald Trump wins again is that the target will, in fact, continue to be China, with the real possibility of some kind of conflict around the issue of Taiwan. The difference this time, though, is that the Russians have understood that there's no cooperation with the West. And so if they were naive, and I think they were to a certain extent, that naivete has been completely destroyed. And so the balance of forces have shifted against the U.S. But make no mistake about this. All of the elements in the bourgeoisie are still committed to global hegemony. The only question is, how do you arrive at it? How do you maintain it?
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
there's a lot of great things said there. And as I mentioned before, we know that Trump is not anti-imperial. He wants U.S. imperial domination. The current neoliberal regime don't like how Trump is going about that. And I'm going to give you guys another example. One of the things that Donald Trump did as president that was actually a positive change was his rhetoric around North Korea, the DPRK. And the neoliberal establishment, while pretending that Trump was a maniac, was attacking Trump for doing the one thing that is actually pro-peace. They was like, Trump is dangerous because he's talking to North Korea and he doesn't want to wage war with them like the psychopaths in the Democratic Party. Are you trying to make it look good or bad here? Now, this is what I'm talking about here. Just to be real quick. One of the only good things Trump did would try to normalize relations with the DPRK, with North Korea. Trump steps into North Korea and agrees with Kim Jong-un to resume talks. Now, I remember at the time, fam, if you saw the Morning Joe segments around this time, bruh, CJ, boy, Joe Scarborough was blowing the gasket every damn show about this. This is why Trump is the worst. He friends with tyrants and dictators. Why is he being friends with Kim Jong-un? This is why Trump is the worst. The one good thing Trump did, they turned it into a negative. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you had Kamala Harris on the campaign trail essentially saying stuff that will lead to war, promising war with North Korea. You had Hillary Clinton on the lead up of Trump, which is why I still say to this day we dodged the bullet, because Hillary Clinton said that we're going to have a more muscular foreign policy than Donald Trump. One of them including increasing sanctions on North Korea and increasing tensions with North Korea. Biden shared the same worldview, which led North Korea to saying this. Why North Korea called Joe Biden an imbecile and a fool with low IQ. And this is what North Korea say about all the Democratic leaders recently, because all the Democratic leaders have been way more unhinged on this issue than the MAGA right. I say the MAGA right because the John McCain right have been on the same page as well. So that's my take on this. It's important to remember that Trump is pro-imperial, pro-empire, but he does stuff like that, like normalizing relationship with North Korea, that the establishment cannot, they will never tolerate that.